Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm your host, Tanya Allen. Americans are just days away from their November 5th election when they will vote in a new president. And as the campaigning winds down, we see a lot of attention on battleground states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Each candidate has brought in celebrities and politicians to stump, but who has the momentum? Is the honeymoon phase enduring for Vice President Kamala Harris? Has former President Trump come back stronger? Did they each pick the right running mate? Which policies are winning and which ones are losing? And most importantly, who will win? Well, joining me now to share his insight is Peter Roff, contributing editor for NewsWeek Magazine. Peter, thanks again for joining me. I always enjoy our chats, especially as we are just days away from this momentous election. So,
it's good to be with you.
Excellent. So, what are the polls saying now?
Polls for the first time ever in his 3 years or 3 times running for president, that Trump is now ahead nationally in the average. If you take all of the major polls out there and average them out, that Trump is ahead. And we've been doing that for several elections because there have been so many polls and some outliers that it's hard to keep up. So people have been looking at the averages and following the trend. And Trump is starting to break away from Harris.
Okay, so how did that happen? Because just a few weeks ago, it seems that Kamala had all the momentum. So is this really a reflection on what's going on the ground?
Well, Peter Hart, who was Jimmy Carter's pollster in 1980 and is sort of the dean of American polling, told me that in the 80 election, it was very clear by spring, the country was ready to fire Carter. But they needed to be reassured that Ronald Reagan wouldn't start World War III. And they had a debate, and people went, okay, we can survive. So they fired Carter, they hired Reagan. And that's where we were going into this election. The people were ready to fire Biden, but they had a lot of doubts about Trump. The doubts about Biden hit an apex after his debate with Trump, and it looked really good for Trump. The Democrats, fearing they would lose, swapped Biden for Harris. All Harris had to do was show that she could handle the job, and I think the country would have been with her. And she did very well in the first debate, or in the only debate, and gave her that momentum. She rode that through to the vice presidential debate between Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And Tim Walz was so awful in that debate that I think it caused people to start looking closer at Harris. And there's much hue and cry that both the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post, two of the most politically significant papers in the country, opted not to endorse either candidate for president, which, if you want, I think you can read as an endorsement.
Yeah, I mean, that was shocking, because I think this is the first time in the Washington Post history that they're not endorsing someone.
Well, the Post first endorsed in 1976. Okay. So it's, Post is more than 100 years old, but they have been endorsing candidates for 50 years. And they are now out of the endorsement business, they say.
Which I think is good for journalistic magazines in general. If you're going to be unbiased, at least show that you are.
I think it is good as well. But if Trump is in fact as bad as they say, and I don't believe he is by any stretch of the imagination, if that's not enough to produce a Harris endorsement, that says an awful lot about Harris. Right. And I think that's caught up with her. By my calculation, and the folks who watch in Canada may not understand that the U.S. presidential election isn't decided by the totality of the vote. It is the way the votes are cast in all 50 states.
Right.
You have to win a number of votes based on the states that you win. And Trump now has more combinations of states that get him to victory, which is 270 electoral votes.
Right.
Than Harris does.
Because it comes down to the Electoral College, and that's
right.
a concept that, yes, is somewhat foreign to most Canadians, but we have become more familiar with it, I think, probably since the Bush-Gore election. We're going to pick up this discussion in just a moment.